The Alpha King did not stop for slave auctions, but when his warhorse froze mid-stride and his wolf screamed a name he'd tried to forget, Alderan turned. Chained barefoot on the platform, head bowed in torn white linen, stood the mate he had destroyed. If you love stories where second chances meet impossible choices, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Seraphina's romance stories because this is only the beginning.
50 gold. 60. Sold. The auctioneer's voice carried across the stone square like any other transaction. Livestock, grain leves. Alderan of the North Fong throne guided his warhorse along the capital's eastern district, jaw tight, gaze fixed ahead. He hated this route. Not because of the noise. Not because of the crowds pressing too close to his guards. But because of what lingered at the edges of his kingdom. Loopholes dressed as legality. Slave auctions were illegal within his borders. On paper, what survived were debt settlements. Voluntary servitude contracts. Private markets tolerated because dismantling them would require bloodshed too close to the palace walls. And Alderan had learned the hard way that some battles cost more than they saved. So he ignored them. Let his advisors handle the politics. Let the courts argue jurisdiction. A king could not be everywhere. Your Majesty, his captain murmured, slowing his horse. The market route is faster. Alderan nodded curtly. Faster meant passing the auction platform directly. He didn't look. The square buzzed with the rhythm of commerce. Vendors hawked spices. Children darted between stalls. Guards in mismatched armor kept watch from the shadows. Not royal guards, but hired muscle loyal only to coin. On the raised platform at the square's center, a man in a stained vest gestured toward a line of chained figures. Next lot. Strong bones, good teeth, no visible scars. The crowd murmured. A few hands raised. Bids were called. Alderan's horse shifted beneath him uneasy. He tightened the reins. Easy. But the animal wouldn't settle. And then, his wolf stirred. Not the usual restlessness. Not irritation at the noise or the crowd. Recognition. Alderan's breath caught. No. That was impossible. The bond had been severed years ago. He'd felt it snap the night she disappeared. Felt the emptiness carve itself into his chest like a second skeleton. But the scent. Burnt ash. Winter storms. Something wild and aching and painfully familiar. His wolf didn't growl. It screamed. Mate. I need to know. Are you team forgive him, or team make him suffer? Drop a comment. I read every single one. Alderan's head snapped toward the platform. The auctioneer was mid-sentence, gesturing to a woman standing apart from the others. She stood differently than the rest. Not cowering. Not weeping. Barefoot, white linen dress torn at the shoulder, wrists bound in silvered iron that glowed faintly even in daylight. Her head was bowed so low that thick curls fell forward, hiding her face completely. But her posture, controlled, deliberate, like she was choosing not to look, not unable to. Unmarked bloodline, the auctioneer barked. Untouched. No prior claims. Each word landed like a physical blow. Alderan's vision narrowed. The crowd, the noise, the guards, all of it blurred. Because he knew that scent. He knew those hands even bound. He knew the exact angle of her shoulders when she was restraining fury. Phoenix Blackmoor. The mate he had rejected. His heart slammed against his ribs. She was supposed to be gone. Vanished. Safe somewhere far from court politics and crown obligations. Not here. Not chained. The silvered restraints caught the light as she shifted slightly, just enough for him to see the faint burn marks where the metal touched her skin. Silver didn't harm humans. Only wolves. Blood spotted her ankles where the shackles bit deep. Alderan's wolf clawed to the surface, rage flooding his veins so fast he nearly lost control in the middle of the square. Strong legs, good for labor or. The auctioneer's grin turned vulgar. Other uses. The crowd laughed. Phoenix did not move. Alderan's hands tightened on the reins until leather creaked. She shouldn't be here. She couldn't be here. He'd searched for her, sent trackers to every border town, every pack settlement, every refuge that sheltered rankless wolves. Nothing. And now she stood on an auction block, chained like livestock, 30 feet from his horse. The auctioneer raised his hand. Starting bid. Stop. The word came out rougher than Alderan intended. The square fell silent. Every head turned. The auctioneer's face went white as fresh snow. He dropped into a bow so deep his forehead nearly touched the platform. Why, your majesty. Forgive me, we didn't know you were. Alderan dismounted. His boots hit stone with a finality that made the crowd scatter like startled birds. His guards moved with him, hands on sword hilts, but he barely registered them. He walked forward. 3 steps. 5. 10. Phoenix still had not looked up. The auctioneer stumbled backward. Your Majesty, this is a legal settlement auction, sanctioned by the Merchant Guild under. I said stop. Silence. Alderan stopped at the base of the platform, one hand on the wooden edge. His wolf was screaming now, howling, demanding he tear the chains apart with his bare hands, slaughter everyone who dared touch her, burn the entire square to ash. But he forced himself still, forced his voice steady. Release her. The auctioneer's mouth opened, closed. My king, the bidding has already. Alderan's eyes flashed gold. The man fell silent. Release her. Now. Keys fumbled. Chains clattered against wood. The crowd had vanished entirely now, melting into alleys and side streets, leaving only Alderan's guards and the terrified auctioneer. The silvered shackles fell away from Phoenix's wrists. She swayed slightly, just once, but did not fall. And finally, she lifted her head. Alderan's breath stopped. Her eyes met his. Dark. Steady. Unreadable. And completely, devastatingly empty. No recognition. No bond pull. No reich. No grief. No flicker of the connection that should have burned between them even through rejection. Nothing. She looked at him the way she might look at any stranger. Alderan staggered. Because he understood. Phoenix Blackmoor had not just survived his rejection. She had severed the mate bond entirely. If this gave you chills, I need you to do 2 things. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, and drop a comment telling me what time you're watching this. And trust me, you don't want to miss Phoenix's first words to the king who broke her. The silence in the square pressed against Alderan's chest like a physical weight. Phoenix stood on the platform, freed from chains but not moving, her gaze locked on him with the detached curiosity of someone observing a stranger. Not a flicker of recognition. Not a tremor of the bond that should have burned between them even through years of separation. Nothing. Phoenix, he said, and hated how his voice cracked on her name. She blinked slowly. You know me. The question drove a blade straight through his ribs. You know me? As if they hadn't grown up in neighboring territories. As if he hadn't traced every scar on her hands and memorized the exact shade of her eyes in moonlight. As if his wolf hadn't howled her name for 3 years after she vanished. You severed it, Alderan whispered. The bond. You how? I don't know what you're talking about. Phoenix's voice remained steady, polite even. She glanced at the scattered guards, then back to him. But I appreciate the intervention, Your Majesty. Your Majesty. Not Alderan. Not even my king, with the bitterness he would have deserved. Just cold formality. His captain stepped forward. My king, we should move her to. No. Phoenix spoke before Alderan could. I don't need relocation. You were just chained on an auction block, Alderan said, fighting to keep his voice level. You need medical attention. Protection. You need. I need, Phoenix interrupted softly, for you to leave me alone. The words landed like a physical blow. If your heart just broke a little, you're not alone. Comment Phoenix if you think she's being too harsh, or Alderan, if he deserves this. Let's see where we stand. Alderan's wolf howled in protest, but he forced himself still. She didn't remember. Or worse. She remembered everything and had chosen to burn it all away. Captain, he said quietly. Clear the square. Now. Within moments, even his guards had retreated to the square's perimeter, leaving Alderan and Phoenix alone beneath the afternoon sun. She watched them go with that same detached calm, then turned back to him. Was there something else? Do you truly not know me? Alderan asked. Phoenix tilted her head slightly. Should I? The careful neutrality in her tone told him everything. She knew exactly who he was. She just didn't care. 15 years ago, the memory came unbidden. Phoenix had been 17, all wild curls and sharper mind, crouched beside a river with her hands buried in mud. What are you doing? Alderan had asked, 18 and still more curious than cautious. Tracking, she'd replied without looking up. 3 deer passed through here yesterday morning. One was injured, see the drag in the left hoof print. He'd crouched beside her, studied the marks she pointed to. How do you know it was morning? Dew pattern in the displaced soil. She glanced at him then, eyes bright with the particular joy of someone sharing knowledge they loved. The tracks were made before dawn, after the dew settled, but before the sun dried it. Alderan had stared at her. This rankless wolf who read the earth like others read books, and felt something shift in his chest. You're brilliant, he'd said. She'd laughed. I'm observant. There's a difference. Not to me. 5 years later, the memory turned bitter. Phoenix had stood before him in the throne room, summoned by royal decree, wearing a borrowed dress that didn't fit right and holding her spine straight despite the whispers. You understand why this is necessary, Alderan had said, crown heavy on his head, counsel watching from the shadows. I understand you're afraid, Phoenix had replied quietly. I'm not. You're afraid the high alphas won't accept a rankless mate. You're afraid it will destabilize your rule. You're afraid choosing me means choosing chaos. Her voice hadn't risen, hadn't shaken. I understand all of it. Phoenix. It's fine. She'd met his eyes then, and he'd seen something break behind them. I, Phoenix Blackmoor, accept your rejection. The bond should have frayed, should have ached. Instead, she'd walked out of the throne room with her head high, and vanished before morning. And Alderan's wolf had screamed her name for 3 years. You left, Alderan said now, dragging himself back to the present. That night. You disappeared. Did I? Phoenix's expression remained carefully neutral. I searched for you. How thorough of you. The coldness in her tone made him flinch. You don't understand. I had to. The council demanded. I'm sure you had your reasons. Phoenix turned slightly, scanning the square as if checking for something. Now, if you'll excuse me. You were being sold, Alderan said, voice rising despite himself. Do you understand what would have happened if I hadn't? If you hadn't interfered? Phoenix's gaze snapped back to him, and for the first time he saw something flicker behind the calm. Tell me, Your Majesty, do you always rescue people who don't ask for it? You needed help. I needed you to stay away. The words hung between them like drawn blades. Alderan stepped closer, onto the platform's first step. Why were you here? Why were you chained? Does it matter? Yes. Phoenix studied him for a long moment, and he felt the weight of that gaze like judgment. Finally she spoke. This is the 3rd time. Alderan froze. What? The 3rd time I've been sold. Her voice remained steady, factual. The first 2 times I escaped within a week. This time. She paused. This time I stayed. Horror crawled up Alderan's spine. You've been captured before? Why didn't you contact you? Phoenix's lips curved without warmth. Why would I? Because I would have. Rejected me again? She tilted her head. Ordered your guards to escort me to the border? Paid someone to make sure I stayed far from your precious court. Each question landed like a physical blow. I looked for you, Alderan said again, desperate now. For 3 years. I sent trackers to every. You looked for closure, Phoenix interrupted. Not for me. The accuracy of it stole his breath. She was right. He'd searched because the bond's absence had haunted him. Because his wolf wouldn't settle. Because some part of him needed to know she'd survived his rejection. Not because he'd intended to fix what he'd broken. Why stay? Alderan asked quietly. You said this time you stayed. Why? Phoenix glanced at the platform beneath her feet, at the chains still scattered across the wood. When she looked back at him, something sharp glinted in her eyes. Because this auction feeds the blockchain network, she said calmly. And I've spent 3 years memorizing every name, every route, every transaction that keeps it running. Alderan's blood turned to ice. I stayed on that platform by choice. The words dropped like stones into still water. Phoenix Blackmoor hadn't been captured. She'd been hunting. And Alderan had just interrupted the hunt. Phoenix just flipped everything we thought we knew. If you're as hooked as I am, hit that subscribe button. And drop a comment. Should Alderan help her hunt, or stay out of her way? You let yourself be chained, Alderan said, voice hollow with disbelief. For 3 years you've been hunting. Phoenix stepped down from the platform, bare feet soundless on stone. While you were building your perfect kingdom, I was mapping the network that feeds on its outcasts. The square felt too open suddenly, too exposed. Alderan's mind raced through implications, through dangers, through the sheer audacity of what she was claiming. My tent, he said. Now. We're not discussing this here. I don't take orders from you. Then consider it a request. He held her gaze. Unless you want every merchant in this square reporting to their masters that the Alpha King is investigating the black chain. Phoenix's jaw tightened, but she nodded once. The royal tent had been erected at the square's edge, a courtesy for the king's unexpected presence. Inside, maps and reports covered a portable table. Alderan's guard stood outside, far enough for privacy but close enough to intervene. Phoenix walked to the table, studying the maps with professional interest. 3 years, Alderan said, watching her. You've been doing this for 3 years. Someone had to. She traced a route on the map with one finger. The Black Chain Network moves slaves through 7 regions. They use debt settlements as cover, exactly like the auction you just disrupted. I didn't disrupt. You pulled me off a platform in front of 40 witnesses. Phoenix glanced at him. By now, every network contact within 50 miles knows the king interfered with a sanctioned auction. They'll scatter, change routes, go underground for months. Gear twisted in Alderan, Escut. I couldn't just. I know. Her voice softened slightly. You couldn't watch. That's the difference between us. What does that mean? It means I learned to wait. Phoenix turned back to the map. I memorized every face at that auction. Every buyer who touched merchandise. Every guard who looked the other way. The auctioneer kept records, names, destinations, payment sources. Alderan moved closer. Where are these records? Burned probably. By now. She met his eyes. But I have what matters. Your memory. Every name. Every route. Every noble who funds this operation while pretending to support your anti-slavery laws. The word noble hit like a stone. Court members? Alderan asked carefully. High Alphas, Phoenix said. The same ones who demanded you reject your rankless mate to stabilize your throne. This is about to get messy. If you're ready to see Alderan burn it all down, let me know in the comments. What would you do in his position? Alderan's world tilted. The High Alphas. The council members who'd pressed him to reject Phoenix, who'd argued a rankless mate would destabilize pack hierarchies, who'd promise loyalty if he chose duty over bond. Those same wolves had been funding slave networks, using Phoenix's exile as cover. You're certain, he said, voice dangerously quiet. I've watched them for 3 years. Phoenix pulled a small cloth from her torn dress pocket, unfolded it carefully. Inside were 7 names, written in blood on white fabric. These are your kingmakers, Alderan. And they built your throne on chains. Alderan stared at the names. Lord Varric. Lady Moira. Alpha Christoph. Every one of them sat on his high council. Every one of them had voted to exile Phoenix. The auctioneer, he said suddenly. He's seen you. He knows your face. He knows I'm a loose end. Phoenix refolded the cloth. Which is why he won't live through sunset. Phoenix. You wanted action? She stepped closer. Then act like a king. The execution happened in the same square, 1 hour later. Alderan made it public. Made it brutal. The auctioneer knelt in the center of the platform, hands bound, face white with terror as the charges were read. Trafficking, slavery, conspiracy against the crown. The crowd gathered, smaller now, but watching. When Alderan's blade fell, the message was clear. The king was done looking away. But the court's reaction came faster than he'd expected. By nightfall, messengers arrived at the palace. Urgent requests for audience. Whispered concerns about due process and overreach of royal authority. The high alphas were afraid. Good. You can't keep me here, Phoenix said when Alderan's guards escorted her to the palace. I'm not keeping you. Alderan walked beside her through marble halls. I'm protecting you. I don't need. They'll kill you. He stopped, forced her to meet his eyes. The moment they realize you're the witness who can destroy them, they'll send assassins. Poison. Accidents. You won't survive the week. Phoenix's expression didn't change. Eve survived verse. Not with a target this size on your back. For a long moment she studied him. Then, what are you proposing? Royal witness, Alderan said. It's an ancient position. Gives you legal protection, court access, and the right to testify before the Grand Council without fear of retribution. It also chains me to your side. Yes. Phoenix laughed, short and bitter. From iron chains to political ones. How generous. I'm trying to keep you alive. You're trying to ease your guilt. She turned away. But fine. I accept. On one condition. Name it. When this is over, when the network burns and your precious high alphas fall, you let me go. No tracking. No searching. No sending guards to ensure my safety. The request hurt more than it should have. Agreed. Alderan said quietly. The investigation began at dawn. Alderan seized the auction house, pulled every ledger, every record, every scrap of paper. Phoenix sat in his war room, cross-referencing names with faces, marking maps with routes. The palace whispered. The king's rejected mate had returned. She lived in the East Wing now. She sat at council meetings, silent but present. The high alphas watched her like wolves circling prey. Within 3 days, the pattern emerged. Payments traced back to 7 nobles. Always the same 7. Lord Varric's signature on a debt settlement contract. Lady Moira's seal on transport documents. Alpha Kristoff's coin funding a private auction house. Every one of them had demanded Phoenix's exile. Every one of them had profited from it. Alderan stood in his study, staring at the evidence, and felt something break inside him. His reign had been built on her sacrifice. His stability purchased with her blood. You knew, Phoenix said from the doorway. He turned. I didn't. Not about the network. She stepped inside. But you knew rejecting me would secure their loyalty. You knew choosing duty over bond would give you the throne. I thought, his voice cracked. I thought it was the right choice. For your kingdom? Phoenix moved closer. Maybe it was. But it costs more than you understood. I know that now. Do you? She stopped an arm's length away. Because I'm about to make it worse. Alderan's chest tightened. What are you planning? Phoenix's smile was sharp as broken glass. Tomorrow, I'm invoking the Scent trial before the Grand Council. The words dropped like stones into deep water. The Scent trial. An ancient law, rarely invoked, nearly forgotten. A rejected mate's right to challenge the alpha who cast them aside. If Alderan failed to recognize Phoenix's soul, not her scent, but the essence of who she was, he would lose the right to rule. Phoenix, don't. It's already done. She turned toward the door. I filed the petition an hour ago. The council convenes at dawn. They'll never allow it. She glanced back, eyes glinting in lamplight. They're the ones who wrote the law, Alderan. Let's see if they have the spine to honor it. The Scent trial is coming, and Alderan's entire reign is on the line. Hit subscribe so you don't miss anything, because this is where everything changes. Comment pass if you think he'll succeed, or fail if Phoenix is about to end him. Dawn broke over the palace like a wound. Alderan stood in his chambers, staring at his reflection. Dark circles beneath his eyes. Jaw tight with tension. Crown sitting heavy on the table beside him. He'd have to kneel today. Kings didn't kneel. But rejected mates had rights older than thrones. Your Majesty. His captain appeared at the door. The Grand Council is assembled. Alderan lifted the crown, settled it on his head one last time. Let's go. The Grand Council chamber had been built to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings. Walls carved with the names of every Alpha King dating back 7 centuries. Seats arranged in a semicircle. Elevated so the council looked down on whoever stood at the center. Today, those seats held the 7 high alphas, the royal advisors, and every noble who could claim a blood right to witness. At the chamber's heart stood Phoenix. She'd been given formal clothing, a deep blue dress that actually fit, silver embroidery at the collar. Her hair had been bound back, revealing the sharp lines of her face. She looked like royalty. She looked like everything Alderan had thrown away. The head counselor, Lord Varric, rose. His voice echoed off stone. We are gathered to honor an ancient petition. Phoenix Blackmoor, rankless wolf of the border clans, has invoked the Scent trial. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Alderan descended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing. The Scent trial, Lord Varric continued, allows a rejected mate to challenge the alpha who cast them aside. The test is simple. The alpha must recognize not the mate's scent, but their soul. He paused. Failure results in loss of rank, title, and the right to rule. More whispers. Louder now. Lady Moira leaned forward. This is madness. The law hasn't been invoked in 200 years. The law, Phoenix said calmly, is still valid. You dare. Idare. Phoenix's gaze swept the council. Unless you'd like to publicly admit your laws mean nothing? Silence fell. Lord Varric's jaw tightened. Proceed. Phoenix moved to the center of the chamber. Alderan followed, stopping 3 paces away. Kneel, the head counselor commanded. Alderan's pride screamed in protest. His wolf snarled. But he lowered himself to one knee, crown still on his head, and met Phoenix's eyes. She watched him without expression. The trial begins, Lord Varric announced. Phoenix Blackmoor will stand in silence. Alpha King Alderan must speak 3 truths about her soul. Not her scent, not her appearance, but the essence of who she is. If he fails. He paused. The crown passes to the council's chosen successor. Alderan's mouth went dry. 3 truths. Not facts anyone could observe. Truths only a mate would know. Phoenix stood perfectly still, waiting. Alderan closed his eyes, let his wolf rise just enough to remember. Not her scent, though it still haunted him. Not her face, though he'd dreamed it for 3 years. Her soul. You count your steps, he said quietly. When you're nervous. Not obviously, just a slight pressure of your toes against the ground. 3 steps forward, 2 back. You've done it since you were 16. Phoenix's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. One truth. Alderan continued. You're afraid of silence. Not noise, silence. Because silence means you're alone. And being alone means no one will notice if you disappear. That's why you hum. Old pack songs usually. Under your breath when you think no one's listening. A tremor ran through Phoenix's shoulders. 2 truths. The chamber held its breath. Alderan opened his eyes, looked at her fully. You forgive too easily, he whispered. Not because you're weak, but because you understand pain better than anyone should have to. You see people at their worst and still believe they can be better. Even me. His voice cracked. Especially me. And I never deserved it. Phoenix's mask shattered. Her eyes glistened. Her hands trembled. She said nothing. The trial demanded silence, but her expression said everything. Lord Varric stood slowly. The trial is complete. Alpha King Alderan has. Barely. Lady Moira interrupted coldly. He passed barely. He passed, Phoenix said, voice rough. The law doesn't require perfection. Only truth. The court erupted in whispers. Alderan rose, legs unsteady. He'd passed. But Phoenix was right, he'd barely survived it. If you felt that, I felt it too. This is the kind of story that stays with you. Hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this ends. The fracture came within the hour. Half the council stood furious. The other half watched in tense silence. This is unprecedented. The law is clear. She manipulated. Alderan raised his hand. Silence fell. The trial is complete, he said. Phoenix Blackmoor's petition is honored. She remains royal witness. This council is dismissed. Lord Varric's face went white with rage, but he bowed. The nobles filed out, whispering, casting dark looks at Phoenix. Alderan moved toward her. Phoenix. Don't. She stepped back. You passed. That's enough. It's not. A scream echoed from the corridor. Then another. Alderan's wolf surged. Stay here. He ran. The palace courtyard was chaos. Guards shouted. Blood-stained marble. 3 bodies lay crumpled near the fountain. Palace staff, throats cut. Your Majesty. A guard stumbled forward. They took her, the royal witness. They came through the east entrance. Ice flooded Alderan's veins. Ooh. Masked. 10 of them. They killed anyone who tried to stop. Alderan didn't wait for the rest. He shifted. Not partially. Not controlled. Fully. His wolf tore free with a roar that shook the palace walls. Bones cracked, reformed. Fur erupted across his skin. The crown clattered to stone as his body reshaped itself into something primal and furious. The Alpha King disappeared. The wolf remained. And it was done being merciful. The city burned. Not literally, but it might as well have. Alderan's wolf moved through the capital like a storm, guards struggling to keep pace. Every auction house, every slave market, every debt settlement office. He tore them apart. Merchants scattered. Chains shattered. The hidden networks that had operated in shadows for decades were dragged into daylight and destroyed. Lord Varric's estate went up in flames when guards found ledgers in his study. Lady Moira was arrested in her chambers, surrounded by transport documents. Alpha Kristoff tried to run. He didn't make it past the city gates. By midnight, the Black Chain network lay in ruins. But Phoenix was still missing. Alderan found her in a warehouse at the city's edge. The building reeked of blood and silver and fear. He shifted back to human form, pulled on the clothes his guards handed him, and stepped through the broken door. Bodies littered the floor, masked figures all dead. At the warehouse's center, surrounded by shattered chains and spilled blood, stood Phoenix. Her dress was torn. Blood spotted her arms. Silver burns marked her wrists where they'd tried to restrain her. But she was standing. And at her feet lay the warehouse master, throat cut, eyes staring at nothing. Phoenix looked up as Alderan approached. Took you long enough, she said. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. Alderan closed the distance between them, stopped just within reach. You're hurt. I've had worse. Phoenix. They came for me because I made you care. She met his eyes. Because a rejected mate shouldn't matter to a king. But I do matter, don't I? Alderan's throat closed. You've always mattered. Phoenix swayed slightly. Alderan caught her before she fell, lowering them both to the floor. Around them, the warehouse settled into silence. The Black Chain network was broken. The corrupt High Alphas had fallen. But as Alderan held his rejected mate in the ruins of the kingdom he'd bled for, one truth became painfully clear. Winning the war didn't mean he'd won her back. We're almost at the end, and I need to know. Can Alderan ever truly make this right? Comment what you think Phoenix should do. And subscribe. The palace healers worked in silence. Phoenix sat on the edge of a bed in the royal infirmary, letting them clean the silver burns on her wrists, stitch the deeper cuts on her arms. She didn't flinch. Didn't make a sound. Alderan watched from the doorway, still wearing clothes stained with ash and blood from the night's purge. When the healers finished and bowed their way out, Phoenix finally looked at him. You didn't have to burn the city down, she said. Yes, I did. For me? Or for your guilt? The question landed like a blade between his ribs. Alderan stepped inside, closed the door. Does it matter? It's the only thing that matters. Phoenix stood, testing her weight on unsteady legs. You passed the scent trial. You destroyed the Black Chain network. You executed the nobles who built their fortunes on suffering. And now you're standing there like you expect. What? Gratitude. I expect nothing. Good. She moved toward the window, stared out at the city. Smoke still rose from the warehouse district. Because I don't want a mate bond, Alderan. I don't want the destiny we were supposed to have. The words shouldn't have hurt. He'd known this was coming, but they did. What do you want? He asked quietly. Phoenix turned. Accountability. I'm trying. Not just from you. She gestured toward the palace, the city beyond. From everyone. Every noble who looked away. Every guard who took bribes. Every citizen who bought goods they knew came from chains. Her voice hardened. I want a kingdom that doesn't need a rejected mate to burn it down before it remembers its own laws. Alderan's chest tightened. That's what I want too. Is it? Phoenix stepped closer. Or do you just want to stop feeling guilty long enough to sleep at night? Both, he admitted. I want both. For the first time since she'd returned, Phoenix's expression softened slightly. At least you're honest. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Alderan reached up, removed his crown, and held it between them. Phoenix stared. What are you doing? Offering you a choice. He extended the crown toward her. Not as an apology, not as payment for what you've suffered, but as responsibility. I don't want to be queen. I'm not asking you to be. Alderan's voice remained steady. I'm asking you to hold me accountable, to stand beside me in court and call out every injustice, every compromise, every time I choose politics over people. I'm asking you to be the conscience this kingdom needs. Phoenix looked at the crown like it might bite. You're asking me to stay. I'm asking you to choose. Alderan lowered the crown slightly. You could take this and rule without me. The council would accept it after the trial. You have the legal right, the public support, and honestly, his voice cracked. You'd probably be better at it. Alderan. Or you could leave. He met her eyes. Walk away tonight. I'll keep my word. No tracking. No searching. No guards following at a distance. You'll be free. Free, Phoenix repeated, tasting the word. After everything, you think I want freedom? Don't you? She was silent for a long moment. Then, I spent 3 years hunting the people who profit from suffering. I memorized names, routes, faces. I let myself be chained and sold and brutalized so I could gather evidence. Her hands trembled slightly. And you think what I want is to walk away and pretend none of it happened? Alderan's throat closed. What do you want, Phoenix? She looked at the crown, then at him. I want a kingdom worth saving, she said quietly. I want laws that mean something. I want people to be safe in their own streets. I want. She paused. I want to believe that what we went through wasn't for nothing. It wasn't. Prove it. Phoenix stepped closer. Not to me. To them. Every slave you freed tonight. Every family torn apart by the network. Every person who suffered while your court looked away. Prove to them that this kingdom can be different. Alderan held the crown between them like an offering. I can't do it alone. I know. Phoenix's gaze held his. That's why you need people who'll tell you the truth. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Will you be one of those people? Phoenix didn't answer immediately. She looked at him, truly looked, and Alderan felt the weight of her judgment. Finally she reached out. Not for the crown. For his hand. She pressed her fingers against his palm, testing, and the absence of the mate bond screamed between them. No pool. No fire. No destiny written in instinct. Just choice. I'm not staying because of what we were, Phoenix said. Or what we could have been. I'm staying because this kingdom needs someone who remembers what it costs to be powerless. Phoenix. I'm not staying for you. Her grip tightened. I'm staying for them. Alderan nodded, throat too tight for words. Phoenix released his hand, stepped back. Keep your crown, she said. I have work to do. This is the kind of ending that makes you think. If it hit you in the chest, let me know in the comments. What would you have chosen? Dawn broke over the capital 3 days later. Alderan stood in the same square where he'd found Phoenix chained, watching as workers dismantled the auction platform piece by piece. The chains had been melted down. Phoenix's idea. The metal would be reforged into tools for the freed slaves. Plows, hammers, wheels for carts. Instruments of building instead of bondage. Phoenix stood beside him, watching the work. She wore simple clothes now, her choice. Royal witness didn't require silk and jewels. The council wants to know when you'll appoint new high alphas, she said. Let them wait. Alderan kept his gaze on the workers. We're rebuilding the system from the foundation up this time. No appointments until we know they're worthy. That could take years. Then it takes years. Phoenix's lips curved slightly. The old Alderan would have rushed to fill the seats. Stability over justice. The old Alderan was a coward. He was afraid. She glanced at him. There's a difference. They stood in silence as the last section of platform came down. Somewhere in the city, freed slaves were being given housing, food, protection. The treasury had been opened. Another of Phoenix's demands. Reparations, she called it. The council had protested. Alderan had overruled them. I have a question, Phoenix said suddenly. Ask it. If the bond were still intact, if I hadn't severed it, would you have looked for me after that first year? Alderan considered lying, considered soft truths, chose honesty instead. I don't know, he admitted. I'd like to think I would have. But the crown was heavy, and it was easier to believe you were better off without me. At least you're honest. I'm trying to be. He turned to face her fully. About everything. Phoenix studied him for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. Not to touch. Not to reconnect. To shake. Partners, she said. In rebuilding this kingdom. Nothing more, nothing less. Alderan took her hand. Partners. They shook once formally and released. The mate bond remained severed. The romantic arc remained unresolved. But as the sun rose over a kingdom without chains, over a capital learning to value justice over comfort, over a square where instruments of torture had become tools of creation, something new took root. Not destiny. Not fate. Choice. And maybe, Alderan thought as Phoenix turned to review the day's work schedule, maybe choice was stronger than any bond could ever be. The workers called for Phoenix's opinion on the metal allocation. She walked toward them without looking back. Alderan watched her go, crown heavy on his head, and wondered if she'd ever look at him the way she once had. Then he followed her into the work. Because whether she loved him or not, whether she ever forgave him or not, whether the bond could ever be restored or not, the kingdom needed them both. And that, for now, was enough. Or is it? Phoenix and Alderan's story continues. Thank you for going on this journey with me. If this story meant something to you, subscribe to Seraphina's romance stories, because these characters aren't done yet. And drop a comment. Do you think Phoenix will ever forgive him? Or is some damage too deep to heal? I'll be reading everyone.
If you made it to the end of Phoenix and Alderan's story, I just want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for investing your time, your emotions, and your hope in these characters. Stories only live when someone cares enough to listen, and you cared. That means everything. Now, I need to ask you for a favor, and I'm not too proud to admit I'm begging here. The algorithm hasn't been kind to us lately. Despite the love and effort our entire team at Seraphina's romance stories pours into every chapter, every scene, every word, our videos aren't reaching as many people as they should. And that's where you come in. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something, please drop a comment below. Like this video, share it with your friends, your family, your loved ones. Post it on your WhatsApp status, your Facebook, your Twitter, anywhere you think someone might need a story like this. Tell the algorithm that this matters. Tell it that stories like Phoenix and Alderan's deserve to be seen. That's why we pause and ask for subscriptions and comments throughout the videos. Not to annoy you, but because it's the only way these stories survive, the only way they reach the hearts that need them most. So if you truly enjoyed this, help us spread it. Be part of the team that keeps these stories alive. Thank you from everyone at Seraphina's Romance Stories. And may love find you when you least expect it, and may you have the courage to choose it when it does.